Toys are, by definition, objects created to entertain, educate, or delight children. With each generation, new ideas emerge with the aim of making childhood more playful, creative, and stimulating. However, these inventions don't always follow the expected path. Some cross the line into the bizarre, the inappropriate, or even the dangerous. Between poorly planned attempts at innovation and concepts that seem promising on paper, the world has seen toys that cause more shock than fun, and many of them should never have made it to store shelves. For years, manufacturers have tried to explore bold themes, break norms, or create overly realistic experiences, but ended up delivering products that spark controversy, fear, and immediate rejection. In many cases, the problem wasn't just the appearance, but the mechanical functions, disturbing sounds, or embedded messages. After all, what makes a toy, created for children, become a symbol of discomfort and public debate? Hello, curious minds. I'm Code, and this is Discover It, where curiosity knows no bounds. Subscribe and help the channel grow, because every time you like, comment, or share, you're helping us bring these discoveries to more people. Together, we can create a community where curiosity can change the world. And now, without further ado, let's get into the video. Released in 1996, the Cabbage Patch Snack Time Kids seemed at first like just another charming addition to the already beloved Cabbage Patch doll line, adored by parents and children since the 1980s. This time, the innovation was that the doll ate plastic food-shaped accessories using a motorized mouth that pulled the items into its head. The idea sounded clever: to create an interactive experience where a child would feed the doll in a realistic pretend play scenario. But there was a crucial detail: the toy had no off switch. As the doll was used, reports started emerging about situations that were far from fun. Children had their fingers, hair, and even pieces of clothing continuously pulled by the toy's mouth, which didn't stop as long as there was something moving inside it. In some cases, parents had to forcibly intervene to remove the doll because it simply wouldn't let go of what it had bitten. The absence of a basic safety mechanism turned what was supposed to be a lighthearted game into a potentially traumatic experience. How did a children's product go through all approval stages without this flaw being caught? The backlash was immediate and negative. The toy, which had been envisioned as the star of Christmas 1996, quickly became a classic example of engineering failure and inadequate testing. The manufacturer, Mattel, claimed the doll had been thoroughly tested, but the incidents spoke for themselves. The only way to stop the toy was to remove the batteries, far from practical in an emergency. This flaw highlighted a delicate point. How far can the pursuit of innovation go before it starts putting at risk the very audience the toy was made for? Created in the early 1970s by Remco, the Baby Laugh a Lot doll was designed with a simple goal: to make children laugh along with her. The concept was straightforward: a doll that emitted laughter when turned on. But the result exceeded all expectations, and not in a good way. Instead of conveying joy, the sound the doll made caused immediate discomfort. Its laugh was continuous, loud, and had an artificial tone that quickly became unsettling. Coupled with wide-open eyes and a fixed-open mouth, the expression was considered by many to be more macabre than playful. The most striking aspect of Baby Laugh a Lot was its original TV commercial. In the ad, the doll was presented in a dark setting, slowly spinning, with a child next to it smiling almost forcibly, while the robotic laughter echoed for several seconds. The visual and auditory effect was described by many viewers as disturbing. It was like watching a scene from a horror movie. The combination of repetitive sound, strange lighting, and an unmoving facial expression was enough for the doll to become infamous, but not for the reasons the creators had hoped. It's the kind of laugh that doesn't make you want to laugh along. It makes you want to leave the room and turn off the lights behind you. Seriously, it sounded like the doll was laughing at an evil plan. Although the toy attracted some curious buyers, its popularity was short-lived. Most parents who saw the commercial felt uneasy, and many reports indicated that children didn't react well to the toy either. The case of Baby Laugh a Lot became emblematic. How did something with all the elements to be fun end up achieving the exact opposite. This doll left a legacy not as a collectible or bestseller, but as a reminder that when working with children's products, tone, sound, and even facial expression need to be carefully calibrated. The Jibba Jabber, released in the 1990s by the Ertl Company, had a simple mechanism. When the doll's head was shaken side to side, it produced a deep, loud, gurgling sound. At first glance, it was a cartoonish, colorful toy with a seemingly fun and harmless proposal. But the action required to activate the sound, holding the toy by the neck and shaking it vigorously, quickly raised negative reactions. The motion uncomfortably resembled an aggressive action, evoking the act of violently shaking a child. Criticism intensified when child health experts and organizations began pointing out the resemblance between the toy's use and the practice known as shaken baby syndrome, a form of child abuse that can cause severe brain injuries. The problem with Jibba Jabber wasn't just the sound or design, but the way interaction with the toy was structured. A child might find it fun to shake something by the neck, but what happens when that behavior is transferred to other contexts, including with younger siblings? That was the critics' central concern. Even after attempts to rebrand the toy and launch awareness campaigns, Jibba Jabber was eventually pulled from shelves. It became a clear example of how a toy's mechanics can have serious, if unintended, implications. The toy unintentionally served as a warning about the impact that seemingly harmless forms of play can have on child behavior. How did no one see this before putting it on the market? Known for turning water fights into one of the favorite pastimes of summer vacation, Super Soaker built its reputation on powerful, colorful, and safe models. But when the Linator model was released, the concept veered off course. Instead of shooting jets of water, it fired a thick, white substance marketed as alien slime. The idea was to offer a different experience with a more viscous texture, echoing the gross-out fun of certain kids' TV shows of the era. However, the visual result and the context of the discharge sparked a kind of controversy the manufacturer clearly hadn't anticipated. Despite marketing campaigns trying to maintain focus on the product's space theme, visual associations made by parents and critics were immediate. The liquid resembled bodily fluids, making many adults uncomfortable with the product being marketed to children. The problem worsened with exaggerated commercials and forced facial expressions that seemed more bizarre than funny. On top of that, the substance was extremely difficult to clean stained clothes and stuck to hair. Details that made the play experience less fun and more of a chore. Was it really necessary to push the envelope this far in the name of innovation? The criticism was strong enough for the model to be quickly pulled from circulation. Super Soaker, until then a symbol of classic, safe fun, saw its image temporarily tarnished by a lapse in aesthetic and functional judgment. The Linator case shows how a simple deviation from the formula can produce entirely undesirable results. What seemed like just a slimy novelty became an example of how a toy's appearance can carry unintended and not always appropriate messages. The breast milk baby was launched with an ambitious proposal to simulate the breastfeeding experience in an interactive way for children. The doll came with a flower-decorated vest that, when positioned on the child's chest, activated sensors in the toy's mouth, causing it to emit sucking sounds during nursing. The idea, according to its creators, was to normalize breastfeeding and educate early on about the bond between mother and baby. But the concept, though surrounded by good intentions, met with strong public resistance. The discomfort stemmed mainly from how the toy brought young children very literally close to a typically adult behavior. Many parents reported that the simulation was excessively realistic, causing unease during play. Furthermore, the sound emitted by the toy wasn't soft or playful, but direct and mechanical, amplifying the impact of the experience. Instead of encouraging educational play, the final result created an awkward situation for both the children and the adults around them. Look, the idea of talking about breastfeeding is totally valid, but a kid with a vest on their chest and a doll sucking? That's just too weird. It felt more like a cringe session than a learning moment. The discussions gained media attention and eventually reached international proportions. On TV shows and opinion columns, Breast Milk Baby was pointed out as an example of excess, a product that crossed the line between childhood innocence and the complexity of human behavior. The manufacturer tried to justify the educational intent, but the reception was overwhelmingly negative. The toy, which could have been a tool for awareness if handled more delicately, ended up being seen as a misstep in the delicate territory between play and teaching. Launched in Japan, the Y doll, also known as Yumi, presented a curious concept. A doll that only cried when injected with a toy syringe. Unlike other dolls that make sounds when hugged or rocked, Yumi was activated by a specific action, simulating an injection. Upon receiving the procedure, she would begin to cry and make sounds of discomfort, as if she were truly in pain. The idea was to represent real-life doctor visits, aiming to familiarize children with the routine of vaccinations. But the execution of the concept had quite a different effect. The use of the syringe as the doll's main activation mechanism raised concerns among educators and parents. Not just because of the potential to normalize syringes as play objects, but also due to the direct association it created between pain and fun. Was it really necessary for a child to associate suffering with how the toy functioned? In addition, there were physical risks. Although plastic, the syringe could be misused or pressed too hard, leading to minor but avoidable injuries. The idea of a doll that only reacts when being hurt also raised deeper questions about the type of emotional interaction expected from a toy. The public reaction was mixed, but international criticism was largely negative. The doll had limited sales outside Japan and was quietly removed from several markets. The case of the Y doll left a mark for the boldness of its concept and the discomfort it provoked. One could say that trying to represent reality in children's products has its merits, but to what extent is such realism truly beneficial? Created by Hasbro in 1965, Little Miss No Name was anything but conventional. Instead of featuring a cheerful doll in a colorful dress with a charming smile, the concept was entirely the opposite: a sad-looking girl with large melancholic eyes, wearing a burlap sack and sculpted tears on her face. Her hair was messy, and her overall appearance directly evoked poverty and abandonment. The doll even had an outstretched hand, as if begging for change. For many adults at the time, the concept was moving, but did that sentiment also apply to children? According to the manufacturer, the intention was to inspire empathy and encourage feelings of compassion among youngsters. But the doll's visual impact was considered disturbing. At a time marked by post-war optimism and colorful, vibrant toys, Little Miss No Name stood out completely. There was no trace of fantasy or lightness in her design. This doll looked like she stepped out of a painting from the sad expressionist movement. You'd look at her and think, "Girl, do you need a hug? Some hot chocolate? A therapist?" It was as if sadness had been commercialized in the form of a toy. The lingering question was simple, yet unsettling. What kind of emotional experience does a child have when playing with a doll that looks like she's suffering? The public did not respond well. Sales were weak, the reception was confused, and the doll was soon pulled from circulation. Still, her legacy remained. Decades later, she became a collector's item and the subject of analyses about the psychological impact of certain toys. The case of Little Miss No Name revealed that appealing to negative emotions doesn't always result in connection, especially when the target audience is still emotionally developing. With a pair of metal symbols in its hands and wide, vacant eyes, the Magic Monkey is a toy that left its mark not only on the market, but also in the collective imagination, and for reasons beyond mere nostalgia. Inspired by mechanical toys popular in the 20th century, this wind-up or battery-powered monkey would start rhythmically clanging its cymbals while its head bobbed and its eyes blinked in an almost hypnotic way. The combination of stiff mechanical movements and the complete lack of a friendly expression made the toy, at the very least, unsettling. The toy gained even more notoriety after appearing in films, series, and cartoons, often associated with scenes of suspense or psychological horror. A notable example was its appearance in Toy Story 3, where the monkey played the role of a paranoid security guard, reinforcing the eerie aura that already surrounded it. But why would a simple musical toy evoke so much discomfort? Part of the answer may lie in the combination of its fixed stare and repetitive movement, two elements that, when paired, often suggest robotic and dehumanized behavior. Although its original function was purely musical, the magic monkey became a symbol of a strange, almost supernatural aesthetic. There's no violence in its function, nor hidden messages in its design, but its impact is undeniable. It represents the fine line that separates a toy from a disturbing object. Is it just a matter of taste, or is there something deeper behind the fact that so many people describe this simple monkey as scary? Among the most unusual ideas ever released in the children's toy market, You Can Shave the Baby certainly holds a special place. The name said it all. It was a doll covered with a kind of artificial fuzz that could be removed with a toy razor. The concept was meant to offer an interactive play experience and, according to its creators, deliver a social critique of beauty standards imposed from an early age. However, the concept ended up generating more confusion than reflection. How do you react to a baby that needs to be shaved? Visually, the doll deviated entirely from what one expects in a children's toy. Its appearance was strange, almost uncomfortable, with the texture of the hair making the visual experience even more striking. The shaving action, meanwhile, offered no real playful reward. The process was purely mechanical, with no story, no emotional connection. Additionally, the doll's beard trimmings would scatter everywhere, turning playtime into a real nuisance for parents who had to clean up the mess left behind. Was this really the best way to provoke reflection in such a young audience? The toy had a short life. Reactions from both children and adults were predominantly negative. Although the message behind its creation had some merit, the execution failed on almost every level. The critique was overshadowed by the strangeness of the product, and the intended impact became the subject of jokes on TV shows and social media. The case of You Can Shave the Baby highlights a common challenge in entertainment products: how to turn social messages into meaningful experiences without losing sight of what's appropriate for the audience. Few toys have caused as much discomfort at first glance as the pole dancer doll. Released with the idea of being a dancing doll, equipped with a pole and a spinning base, the product featured choreographed movements that imitated a performance around the pole. Even though the creators claimed the intent was simply to entertain with music and motion, the context of the performance immediately evoked an adult activity: pole dancing. This created a stark contrast with the age group the toy was supposedly aimed at. The doll's aesthetics reinforced the association even more. Shiny, tight outfits, heavy makeup, and a suggestive body pose made for a combination that felt out of place in a children's toy. Criticism from parents, educators, and child development experts came swiftly. Many questioned how a toy with such characteristics could pass through all stages of approval without anyone raising a red flag. The doll got up on stage, spun on the pole, and went straight to the list of ideas nobody reviewed. It looked more like a nightclub act than a children's toy, didn't it? After a wave of negative backlash, the pole dancer doll was quietly pulled from the market. In just a few months, it went from store novelty to a textbook example of poor boundaries in toy design. More than just a design mistake, this case raised a serious question. Where is the line between innocent play and inappropriate representation? In this case, the answer seems clear and came too late. The concept behind Pregnant Barbie, launched around 2018, was to address a delicate topic with naturalness: motherhood. The doll, part of Barbie's family character line, featured a detachable belly with a removable baby inside. The idea was to create a playful tool to introduce children to the concept of pregnancy. Although well-intentioned, the execution raised immediate questions. The way the baby was inserted and removed from the doll's body was unsettling even for adults. There was something about the process that didn't feel appropriate for the symbolic world of childhood. The aesthetics also contributed to the rejection. The belly's cut was prominent, the baby had generic features, and the act of giving birth was mechanical and emotionless. For many families, the toy did not foster a sensitive or educational conversation, but instead raised difficult-to-answer questions. How do you explain to a child that this simplified method represents such a complex process? Rather than being a bridge for dialogue, the doll ended up generating more noise than understanding. Following the negative reception, Pregnant Barbie was quietly pulled from the market in some countries. Despite some defenders arguing in favor of its educational proposal, the consensus was that the product failed to portray pregnancy in a sensitive and respectful way. The case served as a reminder that certain topics, no matter how important, require a careful and symbolic approach when aimed at children. After all, not every attempt to teach needs to be literal. Among the countless piggy bank designs to hit the market, the face bank definitely holds a peculiar place. Unlike traditional ceramic pigs, this model featured a human-like face made of flexible silicone, which moved when detecting nearby coins. When a coin was placed near its mouth, the skin would contract realistically. The mouth would open and slowly chew the metal object, while the deep, unmoving eyes maintained direct eye contact with the user. The idea was to make saving money more fun by adding an interactive element. However, the side effect of this innovation was a widely shared feeling of discomfort. The toy's appearance, with its exaggerated human features and mechanical movement, resembled more a facial animation experiment than something designed for children. Watching a face slowly devour your coins while staring silently felt more surreal than playful. Was this really the ideal kind of visual stimulus for kids? Although it was widely promoted as a creative toy, and even a collectible among adults, the face bank quickly became a source of hesitation for parents. Some reported that their children were afraid of the object and refused to use it. The lesson behind the piggy bank was valid, encouraging saving habits, but its aesthetics and sensory experience ended up overshadowing its educational purpose. The case demonstrated that even something as simple as a piggy bank can have a greater impact in presentation than in function. In 1975, Mattel decided to innovate with one of its well-known characters, Skipper, Barbie's younger sister. The idea was to present a doll that simulated the physical growth of adolescence. Thus came Growing Up Skipper, a version of the character that, when her arms were rotated, grew taller and developed a larger bust. The mechanism was simple, but the impact was immediate and not exactly positive. In trying to depict a natural life transition, the company ended up crossing a sensitive line: the early sexualization of childhood. The doll's function turned physical transformation into the main focus of play, overlooking other aspects of adolescence like personality, emotions, or interests. By rotating the arm and watching the change happen almost magically, the child was led to focus solely on bodily changes. This experience, rather than educational, was interpreted by many parents and educators as inappropriate. The question that lingered: did a child really need to play with the development of the female body in this way? The backlash was strong enough for the doll to be discontinued shortly after release. Even so, the episode left a mark on Mattel's history and became a frequent reference in discussions about the limits between representation and suggestion in toys. Growing Up Skipper served as a warning. Even with good intentions, the way a toy handles delicate subjects can trigger effects opposite to what's intended. In trying to portray a life stage, the product ended up reinforcing stigmas and discomfort that could have been avoided with a more symbolic and less direct approach. The Creeping Baby doll, launched in 1871, is a historical example of how the technology and educational theories of the time influenced toy design. Created to teach children about infant motor development, the doll featured an internal mechanical system of gears and springs that allowed it to simulate crawling. Its body was partially made of fabric, but the head, hands, and legs were molded from plaster, which, combined with the automatic movements and sounds generated by the mechanism, created a highly striking visual and auditory experience. In theory, the toy represented innovation. Until the mid-19th century, crawling was viewed with a degree of prejudice, considered animal-like by some parts of society. The doll emerged just as this behavior began to be accepted as an important stage of childhood development. However, the toy's aesthetic result ended up being disturbing to many children. The contrast between rigid materials, the expressionless face, and repetitive motions created an image far from what one would expect from a comforting doll. Over time, the creeping baby doll lost ground to more cheerful and friendly toys, but its legacy remains as a symbol of the transition between pedagogical intention and sensory experience. Today, it's more of a museum piece than an actual toy, yet it still serves as a landmark in the history of educational toys. Its impact raises a relevant question. To what extent does the pursuit of realism in a toy justify sacrificing the emotional connection it's meant to promote? My Cleaning Trolley was released as a pretend play toy aimed at young children interested in mimicking adult household chores. Featuring mini brooms, squeegees, buckets, and even decorative bottles of cleaning products, the full kit came in vibrant colors, almost always in shades of pink, and was marketed primarily to girls. At first glance, it seemed like an innocent and common pretend play toy, but the discussion quickly deepened. Was this kind of toy truly educational, or merely a reflection of outdated stereotypes? Critics argued that My Cleaning Trolley reinforced the idea that household chores are exclusively for girls, shaping perceptions of social roles from an early age. While cleaning is a part of every adult's life, the problem lay in how the toy was presented. With a clearly gendered visual appeal and no diversity in representation, the absence of promotional material showing boys playing with the set only strengthened the traditional narrative. In the 21st century, did this kind of marketing still make sense? Although it didn't cause panic or fear like other controversial toys, My Cleaning Trolley sparked an important debate about representation and equity in childhood. Several stores even changed how they advertised the product, trying to make it more gender-neutral. However, the central question remained: should toys merely reflect today's society or help shape a new generation with more inclusive perspectives? That question remains relevant every time we analyze any item intended for children. Over the years, countless toys have been created with innovative, educational, or simply different intentions. However, as we've seen in each of these cases, the line between creativity and controversy can be thinner than it seems. Whether due to design flaws, poorly calculated aesthetics, or misinterpreted messages, some toys end up leaving a mark not for the joy they provided, but for the debates they sparked. When the target audience is children, every detail matters, from mechanics to symbolism. These 15 examples show that behind something as seemingly simple as a toy lies a universe of decisions that can influence behaviors, feelings, and even beliefs. And if there's one clear lesson that repeats itself, it's the importance of balancing innovation with responsibility. Toys can teach, entertain, and shape someone's life, but to do that, they must respect sensitive boundaries and reflect the world we want to build. If you enjoyed this journey of discovery, don't forget to leave a like, share with your friends, and comment below what stood out the most to you. Maybe others will relate, and we can create a great conversation. And of course, subscribe to the channel for more content where curiosity knows no limits.